You're sitting by the fire when it happens. Someone in your group stops breathing. There's no hospital, no doctor, no funeral home to call. Just you, your people, and a body that used to be someone you loved. What do you do next? For most of human history, there was no manual for this. No priest with a script, no coffin catalog, no billion-dollar funeral industry standing by to handle it for you. And yet, everywhere on Earth, in every corner of every continent, ancient humans did the same strange thing when death arrived. They never just walked away from their dead. They never left a body where it fell and moved on with their day. Something deep inside them refused to let death mean nothing, and what they did instead built the foundation for almost everything you associate with loss today. Before we get to graves and ceremonies, it's worth asking a simpler question. Did death always mean something to early humans, or was there a time when it didn't? Some researchers believe that in the very earliest stages of human evolution, death may have been treated almost the same way animals treat it. A body simply left behind. No ceremony, no meaning attached. But somewhere along the way, that changed. And it changed dramatically. The shift from ignoring the dead to deliberately caring for them is considered one of the clearest signs that a species has crossed into something we'd recognize as human. It's not tool use, and it's not fire. Many researchers argue it's this: the moment a group of early humans looked at a dead body and decided it still mattered. Long before writing, before farming, before anything we'd call civilization, humans were already digging graves. Archaeologists have found ancient skeletons, curled carefully into shallow pits, arranged in specific resting positions, clearly placed there on purpose, and not left where they fell. Some bodies were positioned on their side, knees drawn up, almost like sleeping. Others were laid flat, arms folded across the chest. This wasn't random. Someone made a decision about how the body should look before it went into the ground. In some of these graves, researchers found traces of pollen scattered around the bones, hinting that flowers may have been laid on the body before it was covered. Nobody can prove this for certain, and some scientists argue the pollen could have simply blown in or been carried by burrowing animals. But the idea has stuck with us for a reason. Everything else we know about these people suggests they mourned deeply, even without any understanding of what came after death. In some of the oldest graves ever discovered, archaeologists found children buried side by side, covered head to toe in thousands of tiny handmade beads, carved from bone, ivory, and shell. Each bead alone could take an hour or more to shape by hand, using nothing but stone tools. That means someone, or more likely, an entire group, spent thousands of collective hours decorating two dead bodies with jewelry they would never wear again in life. In other ancient graves, bodies were buried with weapons, tools, and personal belongings, items that clearly weren't needed for survival anymore. Nobody decorates a corpse for a practical reason. You do it because loss broke something in you. And physical objects, beads, tools, ornaments, became the only language available to express a feeling too big for words. The color of grief across ancient burial sites. On almost every continent, archaeologists keep finding the exact same strange pattern: skeletons stained deep red, with a natural pigment made from crushed iron-rich stone. Not a small smear either. Entire bodies coated in it. Sometimes, the surrounding earth stained red as well. Nobody knows for certain why, but the leading theory is simple, and honestly, a little haunting. Red looks like blood, and blood looks like life. By covering their dead in red, ancient humans may have been symbolically trying to give life back to a body that no longer had any. It's the same instinct that makes you want to shake someone awake, or say their name, one more time, after they've already gone. Even though, deep down, you know it won't change anything. This wasn't a one-time practice either. It shows up again and again, across thousands of years, and thousands of kilometers, as if grief itself invented the same solution independently, over and over. In many ancient and small-scale societies, studied by anthropologists, the relationship with the dead didn't end at burial. People continued speaking to their dead relatives long afterward, asking for guidance before a hunt, apologizing after an argument they never got to resolve, or simply talking to them, the way you'd talk to someone still in the next room. In some cultures, saying the name of a recently deceased person out loud was considered taboo, believed to disturb their spirit or call them back before they were ready to rest. In others, the opposite was true. The name was repeated constantly, almost like a chant, to keep the memory anchored in the group. Either way, the dead weren't treated as gone. They were treated as changed, present in a different form, still watching, still part of the conversation. Here's something that separates ancient grief from modern grief entirely. For most of human history, the dead didn't disappear from daily life. They were buried close to home, sometimes right beneath the floor, where people slept and ate. This wasn't because people didn't understand what death was. It was because the dead were still considered part of the group, just in a different way. You'd walk past your grandmother's resting place every morning on your way to collect water. Food was often left near burial sites, not as an empty tradition, but because people genuinely believed their dead still belonged with them, still deserved to be included in daily life. Compare that to now. Most people today have never even touched a dead body. Death happens quietly, behind hospital curtains, handled by strangers, in another building, then transported, processed, and displayed only briefly, before being sealed away permanently. We've built an entire system whose main purpose is to keep as much distance as possible between the living and the dead. Ancient humans did the complete opposite. They built their homes, their routines, and their daily lives around death, not despite it. Studies of small tribal communities that still live in ways similar to ancient humans reveal something powerful about how they processed death. For days, sometimes weeks, after someone died, the group would gather around the fire at night and simply talk about the person. Not formal eulogies, not scripted speeches, just casual memories. What they used to say, jokes they used to tell, moments that made everyone laugh, retold again and again until the sadness softened, slightly around the edges. Researchers believe this repeated storytelling served a real psychological purpose. It kept the person alive in memory, just long enough for the group to slowly adjust to their absence, piece by piece, night by night, in a world with no photographs, no voice recordings, no old videos to rewatch. At 2 a.m, stories were the only technology humans had to hold on to someone they'd lost. And it worked. It still works today. When someone dies now, what people crave most isn't silence or distraction. It's someone willing to sit with them and to talk about the person they lost. Grief in ancient societies wasn't just internal, it was visible. In many cultures, mourners cut their hair short, smeared ash or clay on their skin, or wore specific colors to signal to everyone around them that they were carrying a loss. This wasn't just decoration, it served a real social function. It told the rest of the group, without needing a single word, to treat this person gently, to expect less from them for a while, to give them space. In some societies, mourners were expected to avoid certain foods, certain activities, even certain people, for weeks at a time. Grief had visible rules, and everyone around the mourner understood exactly what those rules meant and respected them. In small ancient groups, mourning wasn't only an emotional release, it was deeply practical. When someone important died, especially someone who held a specific role in the group, the entire social structure had to quietly reorganize itself. Who hunts now? Who looks after the children left behind? Who takes over the responsibilities that suddenly have no one attached to them? Mourning rituals gave people permission to fall apart completely for a while, to stop functioning normally, without judgment, and then, slowly, over days or weeks, put themselves back together in a slightly different shape. Nobody needed to formally announce that things had changed. The ritual itself created the space for that shift to happen naturally. We don't really have that anymore. Modern grief gets a few days of bereavement leave, if you're lucky, and then you're expected to answer emails again, like nothing happened at all. For tens of thousands of years, death stayed deeply personal. A small group, a shallow grave, a handful of pigment, a story told by firelight, until the pain became bearable. Then, as human populations grew larger, as small groups became villages, and villages became cities, something fundamental shifted. Simple graves slowly became massive monuments. Personal, communal burial began turning into a public display of power and wealth. Rulers and wealthy individuals were buried with treasure, servants, and elaborate structures built specifically to outlast time itself, while everyone else received a simple hole in the ground. And whatever ritual the religious authority of the era decided was appropriate, death stopped being purely about loss. It became a performance, a statement about status, and, in many ways, it still is today. Eventually, mourning stopped being something A community did together and slowly became something you pay other people to manage on your behalf. Professional embalmers, funeral directors, cemetery plots, sold like real estate, entire industries built specifically around the moment of loss. What used to take days of shared storytelling around a fire now often takes a single scheduled service, sometimes barely an hour long, followed by everyone quietly returning to their normal lives the very next day. The rituals didn't disappear completely, but they became smaller, faster, and increasingly disconnected from the community that used to carry the weight of loss together. Here's the uncomfortable part. Ancient humans, with none of our medicine, none of our science, none of our grief counselors or support hotlines, may have actually handled death better than we do. They kept their dead close. Instead of hiding them away behind hospital walls, they told stories. Instead of scrolling past a notification and moving on, they gave grief weeks, sometimes months, not a long weekend. Before returning to normal life, they marked their mourning visibly, so the people around them knew exactly how to treat them. They didn't have any real answers about what happens after death. Nobody did. Nobody still does. But they never once treated death like something to rush past quickly and quietly. You live in a world with more information about death than any humans in history have ever had access to. And somehow you're more afraid of it, more disconnected from it, and more alone in it than they ever were. Maybe that's the real difference between them and you. It was never that they understood more than you do. It's that they sat with it fully, openly, together, and we don't anymore.